Hello, welcome to another awesome video. In this one, I'll be painting the backside of the pauldron from the Age of Sigmar model Commander Bastion. I've already painted a lot of the non-metallics on him from the front view and also some of the back view. I actually already painted these reflections once in an orangey tone. You can still see a bit of the orange on this backside on the top within the recesses, and I'll be redoing those too. The reason why I'm redoing it is I wasn't too satisfied with the look. The angle that he's standing at makes it look a bit weird to have them too orangey. So I decided to go back and make them kind of the same tones that I already had on the main upper reflections. I've chosen a light direction from the top right for the whole back to make it really shine and really pop. The colors I'm using for this video is a transition of ogres, mainly ogres. I'm using a Rhinox hide base, which is mostly, if not entirely, covered up with a mix of Rhinox hide and British khaki from AK. The mix is kind of like a greenish tone, so a dark greenish ochre. I then used the pure British khaki, and I have Japanese uniform from Vallejo as my next color in the transition. I then do a mix of the Japanese uniform and ice yellow from AK, and then I use pure ice yellow and a tiny bit of AK greenish white, only for the very brightest points. I'm not sure I even use it too much in this video. I also have a AK golden brown that I use for a bit of glazing if it doesn't go saturated enough, because that's a very saturated yellowish ochre. I'm painting with a Raphael brush, and it's a size 000, so it's a very tiny brush, but the areas I'm covering are incredibly small. It's not super visible from the zoomed in video, but they are extremely small. So the brush strokes are tiny, and the blending will be mostly dotting and scratching. I'm painting under a bright light and with magnification goggles. I use 2x magnification for this. I don't think it really matters if you go 1 time or 1.5 or 2 or whatever. Just something you're comfortable with, if you're even comfortable with wearing magnification. I like it for these smaller things, but not everybody likes to paint that way. The colors I've chosen to make this non-metallic gold with are deliberate in the sense that I wanted a bit more of a greenish look to the gold, as opposed to a more saturated yellow look. Normally I paint with more of a brownish, like a Rhinox hide, Mornfang brown, XV88 Balo Brown mix, but I wanted to have something a bit different. It's not super different, but it does look like a tiny bit more greenish. I did it because I wanted to be able to do reflections on Bastion in another, like a much warmer mix, to have the bounce reflections really stand out. I'm not using it really in this video, but he has a lot of it going on over the entirety of the model. Doesn't really matter if you use exactly these colors or this mix for non-metallic gold to work out. There are some key points that you need to take into consideration when you build your non-metallic highlights. There are kind of like 4 things that I think are the most important. You want to make a bright main reflection on the metallics. Maybe not going all the way to white, but pretty close to white at least. You want it to really stand out and really pop. The main highlight reflection need to be coherent with your light direction. So it's kind of important if you have different kinds of shapes and different volumes that you use the same light direction for them. It will be so much easier to sell the effect. When you've done that, you need to take into consideration that you need high contrast, which means you don't have to go all the way from black, but you have to go from pretty dark. I like to keep a bit of Rhinoxide showing as my darkest color, and as I said, go almost all the way to white, or at least the greenish white, which is an off-white, so very close to white. You don't have to leave a ton of dark, and you don't have to use very much of the very brightest. So it's not like you have to have equal amounts, but it's just very important that both things are present and visible. You generally want to make your transitions very sharp. So when going through your midtones, you would have areas where you keep more of the midtone visible, but also areas where there's almost no midtone, going straight into your highlights with a tiny bit of mid. And the last thing is keep bounce reflections in mind. If you have your main reflections already figured out, you can generally put bounce reflections anywhere you'd like to. A nice rule of thumb would be to put them almost opposite the main reflections, because that would imply the light bouncing off of something it hits. And another thing that's kind of important is you cover more space, so you put more interest in general. Those should be the things to really consider when you make your non-metallic stand out. A little bit about how I build my volumes and pick out my reflections. I follow the shapes that I'm painting. If it's something cylindrical, I would have a bright reflection running down the length. If it's something curved, I would pick out from the light direction and an area with a bright reflection, maybe a tiny bounce besides it, and then let it go into dark. Edges, of course, go very bright as they catch the light the most, but not every edge has to be lighted in the same way. So if you have an edge that's up to a bright spot, you would generally try and make that the brightest area overall, and then the edge would be extended a bit in the brightest, and you can kind of blend it out. So you go very bright and then taper it into a bit darker and a bit darker. So your dark areas could be edge highlighted with maybe a mid-tone or something. The way I blend out the reflections is I do a ton of mixing. So I don't really wash my brush. I just dip it in one color, and then I go to the next in the transition and next in the transition and mix a bit around. So I get a lot of additional kind of mid-tones. Also, there is a consistency of the paint. Very important to have it not too thick, especially when you're painting something that is very small, if you want to blend it out, because you're going to go through a lot of colors. So having it too thick will build up the paint and give you physical texture. My consistency is generally about 50-50 water to paint. Sometimes I go a bit thinner or a bit thicker. It really depends on the opacity of the color itself, but around 50-50. I go back and forth between colors in my transition quite a lot. So I put a bit of color down, look how it looks, consider if I need to blend something out, and then go either up or down in value to fix the transition. On tinier things, you can't really do like a traditional stroke with your brush, but having most of the paint wiped off the bristles, you can do a bit of dotting and tiny scratching to kind of blend it out. The less pressure you apply with the brush, the less pigment will be deposited. And it's kind of important to drag the brush in the direction of either the light or the shadow, depending on if you're going up or down in value. It makes it so much easier to blend everything out. You can see in the video how I'm taking a lighter color and then dragging it over the surface into the bright reflection. You can, if you have some areas that you're not super satisfied with, you can still do kind of a glaze. I don't particularly like a full glaze, but I do like what I call a fat glaze, which is maybe 3 parts water to 1 part paint. Also depending heavily on the opacity of the paint itself, but around 1 to 3, meaning it will change the color a bit, but not super much. Meaning I can get most of the paint off the bristles and then do a stroke over the area. I generally avoid the brightest and the darkest, so it works mostly in the mid-tone or even the lighter mid-tone. I use it to bring a bit more warmth or saturation, or to blend out a transition I'm not satisfied with. This is the end of this video, and hopefully you've learned a thing or two and seen a bit of my technique and how I build up my volumes. See you in the next video.